Hi guys, my name is Karthik and I am from executeautomation.com and welcome to another video of a test project. And today we're going to talk about continuous integration and continuous delivery with TestProject OpenSDK. This is one of the coolest new feature released by TestProject, which allows us to write native Selenium Appium code in TestProject. We already discussed about it a lot, and in our earlier video, we also discussed how we can incorporate native code powered by Selenium Page Object Model on Cucumber, extent reporting, and TestNG in a much easier fashion. So this is the power of TestProject's Open SDK, and this is exactly what we are going to be using this time to see how we can make use of our TestProject's continuous integration with Azure DevOps Pipeline. We already discussed about how we can make use of the continuous integration with Azure DevOps Pipeline with the service hook, but that was using the APIs of TestProject's platform, and which was something where we already need to have our test created on the TestProject platform, and we should also have the jobs available on the TestProject platform, and we can just trigger the service hook, which is nothing but the TestProject's API, to run the job, which is then going to run the test within that job, and then it's going to generate a report for us, which is kind of a different way of working with it, but it was also restricted to TestProject's platform UI a lot. So today we are going to incorporate the whole Open SDK with Azure DevOps Pipeline in a much simpler fashion, and the whole idea is going to look something like this. As you can see, we are going to write our Open SDK code with IntelliJ IDE or Visual Studio Code or whatever IDE of your choice. We're going to write the code, which is nothing but the test code in this case, and then we're going to check in the code in the Azure DevOps repo. And this check-in is going to then trigger the Azure build pipeline, which is nothing but the build operation of Maven is going to take place over there. And then this is going to then trigger the Azure release pipeline, and this release pipeline is then going to call the deployment group of Azure or the deployment agent of the Azure pipeline, which will be sitting within our machine, or it can be a managed cloud container of Azure, or it can be an agent which can be running within a Kubernetes or whatever it is. I mean, it can be of your own environment, but in this case, for this demonstration, we are going to run the agent within my local machine, and this agent is then going to call the TestProject agent, which is going to execute our actual test that we wrote on the first point over here, and then that test is then going to trigger the reports, because it is directly going to talk with the TestProject's platform, and then it's going to generate the whole report of the test execution which is happening, and we can go directly to the TestProject's platform, and then we can see how the report is going to be generated. So this is the whole idea, guys. This is kind of looking pretty straightforward, but the way that you organize the code and how you create a pipeline is a bit tricky, but it's very, very easy to understand once you see the holistic picture of it. And in this video, we are going to see how we can actually perform all these actions in a much simpler fashion. And the TestProject report that we are going to generate is also going to be a bit more traceable this time, which is nothing but once you run the test, it is also going to generate a dynamic report, which is going to match exactly with the build number and the release number of the Azure DevOps pipeline in the TestProject's platform report. So this way you can know that for which release and for which build number this particular report is associated with. Because now that Open SDK is going to dynamically generate the report for you, and you need to keep track of which test is this report for. So in order for the traceability, this option is something very, very important, and we are going to incorporate that within this particular report as well. So let's quickly see everything in action and understand how things work. So for that, I'm going to flip to my Edge Chrome browser right now. All right, so this is my Azure DevOps Pipeline project that I have created already, which is nothing but the TestProject Open SDK, and it has got the code that we have written in our earlier video, which is nothing but the Selenium Cucumber TestNG extend report project, so which you can see over here, TestProject Open SDK. Cucumber, we already discussed about it pretty long time before, and now we're going to make use of this particular project. So I have already imported this particular project within the TestProject Open SDK repo over here within the Azure, so that we can make use of it. And the only change which I made this time within this code, if you see in my IntelliJ IDE, you can see that instead of the project name over here, I have just added the environment variable, which is nothing but the build number, and there is the job name, which is going to be getting the environment variable of release name. That is the only change. But as you can see, there is this token, right? But this token should also be coming directly from the Azure environment variable, which I'm going to be adding in this video because you will understand how it can be done as well pretty easily, which will make sense while you try working out. But as of now, this code is working fine, and I have seen this working fine without any problem. And I can also see the code generate a report while it executes in the test project platform, something like this. So we are going to make use of the same exact thing over here, and we'll see how it actually can be done. So the first thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the pipeline, and then I'm going to create the build pipeline, because the build pipeline is where we need to actually see how we can make use of or build our project completely. So I'm going to choose the master branch, and then I'm going to choose the Maven project, because basically the code that we wrote in our earlier video was a Maven project. And I'm going to choose the Maven pom.xml file over here. It says package, but basically our goal of the Maven was clean and compile. So I'm just gonna mark this as clean, and then I'm gonna create one more Maven pom file, and I'm gonna call this as goal of compile. So this is the clean and this is the compile, and it's gonna copy the files. But this time, instead of just copying the jar file, I'm also going to copy all the files, because it is going to have our pom.xml file and the testng.xml file, which is required for us to run the test on the release pipeline. So I'm going to copy all the files over here, and then I'm going to publish the artifacts, which is pretty clean and neat. I don't have to worry about it. So I'm just going to leave all the default setting because I already have all the agents required for me to build this particular code. So I'm just gonna save and queue, and then I'm gonna see that the code is gonna start building for me. So you can see that it is now acquiring the agent from the cloud, which is pretty cool because Microsoft is gonna do all the magic for us. And then it is initializing the job, and you can see that it is checking out the code. It has done it pretty quickly, and then it is running the Maven clean for the first time, and it's doing the Maven compile. And you can see that this time the Maven has this particular problem. It says the invalid target 9 over here. And that's the reason I have actually chosen the Azure container. So basically what happens is, if you're going to use the Azure container, make sure that the version of the Java that you're using is actually being supported by the Azure container. If not, you are going to end up with this kind of error. So the ideal way of doing it is either have a container which is going to have the Java of version 9 over there, or make use of the agent which is actually going to support it. So for instance, if you see in this particular pipeline, I'm actually using the agent specification of version 16.4. Rather, I can also use my default agent, which is actually running within my local machine. I have already connected it with my Azure pipeline with this particular project, and it is up and running for me. So it is very, very straightforward and simple this time, because if I now run over here within my local machine, you can see that what is going to happen. So once it starts running, you can see that it's running a job, and it says agent job 1, which means it is running the job for me. And this job is going to be very, very straightforward, because it is going to have all those dependencies for me to be executed, and the code is going to be executed without any problem. So make sure that every time you're going to execute your code, you also have all the dependencies specified for that particular container. If not, the code is not going to run, and you're going to get these kinds of error. And now you can see that the Maven was executed so quickly, the clean and compile, and also the publish artifact is now happening. So these are all happening because I already have all the required dependencies installed within my machine, and the agent has everything which is required. And you can see that it is successful this time, and now our artifact is also being created. So if I go to the pipeline over here, and you can see that it has one published artifact, and this artifact is now going to have all the file which is required for us to be executed in the release pipeline. So now I'm going to go to the release pipeline. So I'm going to create an all new release this time, which is going to consume our artifact, and we'll see how it actually can be done. So I'm going to actually perform a test operation. So I'm going to run and test from the test manager. Just don't worry about it. It can be a test manager or it can be anything. And we need to add an artifact, which is something we just created in the build pipeline. So I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to call the source alias as drop. I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to choose the agent here. And again, I'm going to use the default pipeline, which is my own pipelines agent, because this is the agent which has all the required dependencies for me to be executing that test for us, which is pretty cool. And it is something, and this agent also have access to our test project, which is currently running within my machine. As you can see here, the test project is also running the agent. So test project is there, and the Azure DevOps Pipeline agent is also running. So everything is being configured and it's all talking for us. So which means it's all pretty good right now. So that's why I'm choosing my own agent here from the agent pool instead of using the Azure agent. And then I'm going to remove this guy because we don't really require this. Rather, I'm actually going to need what is called as a Maven build test for me. So I'm just going to add this guy. And over here for the Maven, and because we know that we have a goal called as test that we use to execute, MVN verify or MVN test to perform an action. So I'm just going to use the goal as test this time. And the Maven POM file is actually sitting under the drop folder. So I need to choose exactly which is the file, which is nothing but under the drop folder over here. And then I'm going to leave all these guys as it is. And I actually need to also add the variables, because without variables, this particular code is going to miserably perform an action, which is not something we are looking for. So I also need to add the variables pretty quickly before I forget. So if I go to the variables over here, I'm going to add two variables this time. One is the build number, and another one is the release name. So the first one is the build number, and the value is going to be this. And then the release name and the value for them is going to be this one. And also I need the token, because token is something which is required for me for executing this particular code. And the token is actually going to be the token that we have used within our code. So I'm just going to copy this, and this is the best practice that you need to be doing, because if you don't use this particular format, then you are gonna end up with a lot of problems, right? So I'm just gonna use this particular token, and you can also make this as secret so that nobody can actually see that. You can see something like this, which is also one of the security way of using it. And then I'm just going to go to the pipeline once again, and I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna hit OK. And because we have added the token, I also need to modify our code over here. So if I go to the source test Java steps hook.java, and I don't even have to open an editor to do the changes, because it's very easy in Visual Studio, Azure DevOps Pipeline. I can directly go over here, and then I can add the token, something like this. And this is going to be from the system.get environment, like that. So this way I get the token. So we don't really have any of the hard-coded value this time. Everything is going to be coming from the release pipeline for us. So everything is good. I'm going to commit the changes. And before even commit the changes, I can also show you how the auto trigger is going to work. I'm going to go to the pipeline. I'm going to go to the build pipeline. And here is where I'm going to add the trigger for our continuous integration. So I'm going to enable the continuous integration. So every time there is going to be a check-in happen on the master branch, then it is going to be performing a build for us. I'm just going to save this time. See, I'm not even executing anything. But now once I do a commit on the hooks.java, you can see that this pipeline is going to start executing for me, if I'm not wrong. So let me go over here. You can see that it has already started executing for me, which is pretty cool. And once this is executing, I'm also going to go to the release pipeline, and I'm going to do a CD, which is nothing but the continuous delivery. So I guess we have created a release over here. There you go. I'm just going to do an edit, and I'm also going to do an auto trigger. So I'm just going to enable the continuous deployment trigger. I'm just going to save this. So I guess once the build is completed, the release is also going to be triggered for us, which is also pretty cool. So now if I go to the release, let's see if the release is happening. You can see that the release is currently executing because the build pipeline just completed it, and the release pipeline is also started executing for us. You can see that it is currently in progress. If I go and see the log, you can see it's downloading the artifacts for us. Error here, it says no token is present, and that's something very much expected. So what happens while it executes a code for me over here and you get this kind of exception and it says that there is no such token? Because in Azure DevOps Pipeline, there is one more change that we need to be doing on the releases while we try using and variables. So if you go here to the pipeline and if you try to edit this pipeline, it basically what it tells is in this particular stage, whatever variable that you have used over here, like build number, release name and token that you have used, is actually not being passed within your code that you have actually used. So you need to run what is called as a bash command to perform or convert this particular environment variable into a variable which the code can understand. So we are going to be doing that as well. So it's kind of a nice little trick that you can follow to make your code to work with how your Maven stage, which is available over here, is looking for. So I'm just going to write an inline code over here. And I'm also going to export the token as $token. So now I'm going to hit save and I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to create a release this time and I'm going to run it. So basically you can see that the release 2 has been created and now it should hopefully run the code for us without any problem. So if I go to the logs, oops, I think I missed one more thing over here. I just changed I'm just going to cancel this guy. And if I go to the release once again and I'm going to hit edit. So you can see that basically this particular release is currently pointing to an Azure pipeline agent. I don't know, for some reason it has changed. So I'm just going to save it. All right. And now I'm just going to run this guy. So this is the nice little trick, right? I mean, basically, if you have a environment variable, if it is not resolved because your Java code is actually expecting for an environment variable over here, you need to use this bash script, which is going to convert this for you and it will run it for you. So now if I go to the release and if I go to the release 3, you can see that it is currently up and running. And if I see the logs, so basically what's going to happen is now it's going to talk to my agent, which is currently over here running in my local machine. And it is also going to talk with our test project agent, which is nothing but the test. The Open SDK is going to talk to our local test project agent. And the test project agent is in turn going to trigger our test project platform to run the test for us. So basically now if everything is okay, then it should open a Chrome browser for me. As you can see over here, which is pretty awesome. Now you can see that it has opened a Chrome browser and now it is actually starting to execute the test for me over here. So once the test execution starts over here, you can see that it is currently up and running for me. And now if I go to my test project platform, you can see that in monitor, it shows that currently one job was running. And then once again, another test is going to launch over here. You can basically see that it will show you the currently running job as 1. So it is currently running that. So it says that release number 3, that's what we are actually executing it right now. And the test execution is done as well. So we have a report over here, as you can see. So now if I go to the report, you can see that for this particular release, I actually have one report over here, and there is one more report, and there is one failure, which is okay because we know there was a failure as we didn't supply the token. So you can see that this guy is actually going to show us the report. So if I hit this full report, it's going to generate the PDF report for me. There you go. And now I get the complete PDF report, which is for my Cucumber execution, which is actually happening, which is all good. So basically we can now see that our test is actually running in a continuous integration and also in a continuous delivery. Basically now if I make any code change over here, it is gonna trigger the build pipeline for me, and at the same time, since we have set a trigger in the release pipeline, it is also going to run that for me, and we will see the report over there. So this is another way of performing a continuous integration and continuous delivery with Azure DevOps Pipeline and with TestProject platform. So all these are happening with much seamless effort than compared to the service hooks that we discussed earlier with the help of the more new robust Open SDK API. You can also do a lot of things over here, like you can actually see the extend reporting, and also you can see how the report is going to be displayed. So this is from one of my another project. So if I go to the logs over here, you can see that we are doing a lot of operations basically. But if you see this particular test log, it will also show you the test being executed. And if I go to the pipeline, you can see that it is going to show me the extend report which is being generated over here, and the whole report comes in. And you can also see that it is going to perform one more drop, which is going to have the extend report zipped in within this particular pipeline. So this is another things that you can keep doing within the Azure DevOps pipeline, but all of these magics can be done with TestProject in a much simpler fashion using the Open SDK. Once again, thank you very much for watching this video, and you have a great day.